I'm Krista Jan Ryan, and I am your host today for Recovery from Religion, where we come to learn to live in the acceptance of our losses and to look for the hope and healing through Jesus Christ. Welcome to my show. Seems like it's been a long time, but not really. My guest today is Spike Whitmire, who has accepted and has going to try for the Senate again. And it's been 2 years since you last ran, and it's been 2 years since we sat here and did a show. And the show was, you've got what? You've got a voice? You have a voice?
Yeah.
Well, this show is going to be called You Want to Change.
Time for change.
Time for a change.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great line. That's a great slogan. And I think at this particular point in time, I think everybody is ready. I mean, I think you could get out there and peddle anything at this point. People just need to hear it's time for a change.
Yeah, they know it.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they feel it. They sense it.
Yeah, I mean, Vermonters they're being taxed right out of their homes. You know,
Yeah.
It's alarming to think, but it's true. And then a lot of our rural Vermonters are being regulated off their land. They can't even do what they want to do anymore.
Yeah, I think that's so sad because Vermont is known for the farming, for the maple syrup,
Yeah.
for the honey, for the corn on the cob, for all of the things that people come to Vermont for.
Yeah.
I mean, that when I tell people in Vermont, they say to me, "Oh, I've always wanted to go there. It's the land of milk and honey." And I said, "Yeah, but not a lot of money, right?"
Yeah, for sure.
So 2 years ago when you were running,
Yeah.
we were talking about a lot of these similar problems, but not to the extent that it is right now.
Yeah.
Now we see the full-blown magnitude
Yeah.
of what taxation, the education piece, what's happening to our farms. We're seeing that. I mean, before we couldn't really see it.
I think a lot of us were in denial for a long time.
We wanted to stay in denial.
Right. I mean, ignorance is bliss until you get your tax bill, and then you.
I mean, it's not funny,
reality
but it's
hits
true.
home, and it's happened every year for the last 10 years at least. I mean, I was reading a stat that over the last 5 years, property taxes have gone up 40%, almost 40%.
Wow.
In the state of Vermont.
That's astronomical.
It's
unacceptable.
Yeah.
It's almost unobtainable. For a person
it's unsustainable.
It's unsustainable.
Yeah.
And so you have people who have a fixed income or are used to a regulatory amount of money that comes in for their farm, for the things that they grow.
Everyday Vermonters just can't afford to I hate to say it, but don't live in Vermont any longer.
Yeah.
Whether they want to. I mean, our older people that are thinking about retirement and senior citizens already retired, they're looking at the rate of taxes that are going up, and they're realizing that they can't afford to retire here. As much as they would love to stay in their own house that they've lived in forever, but their income's fixed, and at this point the government's tax bills aren't. And the current legislators, we've had them. One party, the Democratic Party's controlled the Senate for 32 years in Vermont.
Oh yeah, you were talking about this. So they controlled that for 32 years.
For 32 years. The House has
Wow.
been controlled for 22 years. And it's just gotten so extreme one way that I think they've kind of lost track of everyday Vermonters and what's going on with everyday Vermonters. Taxes have gotten to the point where people just hold their breath when they get their bill. I mean, my personal tax bill went up way over $1,000 this year, closer to $1,500. And people all over the state are experiencing that same thing. And this is on top of the previous year's tax bills going up and up and up and up. And it's time for change for sure. We can't keep going down this road.
Yeah, it's, like you said, it's unsustainable.
Yeah, our seniors are having to leave. Our young people, there's a study that came out, almost half of our young people say they don't want to start their life in Vermont. They want to move when they get a chance.
Yeah, but where do they go? I mean, where
they're
else
looking
in
for
the,
better
where else in the
opportunities.
country?
There's better opportunities.
There are?
Yeah, there's other states that are easier to live in with less regulation, less taxes, better
That's
economic
so sad to hear.
It is a shame. and we those are our future, the young people.
Absolutely.
And we must keep them in Vermont, and we got to create more economic opportunities for them, so they feel like they'd have a chance to succeed here. But with so many state regulations on businesses and new businesses and zoning and building, it's just so difficult to start businesses, and it's so difficult to maintain and succeed that I think a lot of our young people that are just thinking it'd be easier to go somewhere else and do what I want to do. And that's just a real shame.
So in my mind, it's like, has anybody really, and I know you have been up to Montpelier, and I'm sure you have voiced all of your concerns. So as a person who is in the Senate, how can you start this process of bringing this to, like, this is not sustainable, people aren't going to condemn, but then there's such the influx of wealthy people who are flying in here from Boston, Hartford, New York. What's 1,500 to them?
Yeah, well, the good thing is, if there's a good thing in any of this, the Vermont Senate, if Republicans flip 2 seats, we could flip control of the Senate for the first time in 32 years.
Wow.
And then we could
2 seats.
2 seats, and then we could start pushing some legislation that would start being more fiscally conservative, more business friendly, strip back some of the regulations that have stripped our health system. Where we're down to one healthcare provider in the whole state of Vermont now.
It's crazy.
And things like that. We need to get rid of all that stuff that's just really squashed the state and the opportunities in our state, and so people say, oh, well, what are you going to do? Good luck. You can't, how are you going to change that?
Can't fight City Hall.
I get
blah,
that,
blah, blah,
but
blah.
luckily, like I said, if we could just flip 2 seats, mine and one other seat,
Wow.
we could, begin to enact change.
So you're running on the Republican Party this time.
Yeah.
So who else is running? What other Republicans are running? Are there any?
Well, Bennington District, which is everywhere from Reedsboro to Rupert, and it also includes Londonderry, Stratton, and
It's a big county.
Wilmington. It is. It's a
But
big.
Bennington is a very big county.
It's Bennington County plus Londonderry, Stratton,
Wow.
and Wilmington, and so it's a 2-seat district. So it's myself and one other gentleman running. His name's Josh Williams, and as Republicans, and then there's 2 Democrats running and a progressive. The 2 Democrats are they're currently
Please don't
in the
tell me
House.
they're the ones that have been running forever, that should have retired 10 years ago.
One is this would be he's ran 1 term, served 1 term. The other one's been a lifelong politician. But what gets me is 2 years ago, people were talking about the same thing: affordability, the housing crisis, the education system.
Yeah, this has been going on for a while.
Yeah, the cost of education is out of sight. 2 years ago, we did this, and the same people were talking about, oh, we need to change,
And nothing's happened.
In 2 years, nothing of substance is happening. In fact, government spending in 2 years is up over $1 billion. That's
For
a
Vermont.
billion with a B.
For Vermont.
For Vermont in the last 2 years.
Wow.
What
What was the original before it became an extra billion? How high was it? What was this? What was the spending before it went up to over $1 billion?
Well, we've gone from like 8 to 9 billion, 9 to 10 billion.
God.
It's just skyrocketing out of sight, and I think Vermonters are getting tired of the same old. People run for office, they say they're going to change, and like I said, the same party's been in control for
Ever.
almost 3 decades.
Yeah,
Promises after
it's
promises.
definitely time for a change.
And regardless of what party you belong to, I think it's time for change. It's time for a fresh perspective in Montpelier, and I hope to bring that.
So what happens if there's a Democrat that wins the seat and you win the seat? So then does it come down to the 2 of you duking it out?
No,
And then,
Bennington sends both of us. 2 people go to represent Bennington.
and is there a Democrat that's running that shares some of your vision?
No,
Or,
no.
okay.
the Democratic Party is almost unrecognizable anymore.
It's not, I don't call it a
Yeah,
Democratic Party, I'm sorry. It's just, it's
pro-
beyond
yeah,
recognition
It's
as far as
progressive
I'm
to be
concerned.
nice.
Yeah,
And
communist.
and
I think Joe, when he was on my show, he said it very nicely.
yeah,
But he didn't call it communist. What did he call it? Socialistic.
yeah. So I think a lot of people who've always voted Democratic, been loyal to the party, I think they're beginning to realize it's just not getting it done. And the state of our state has been because of the control of the progressive Democrats. And unfortunately.
And the rhinos.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we need to bring some good, solid conservative principles back to our state.
Yeah, I agree.
And,
I mean, this
Vermonters
is
just can't afford to wait any longer.
this is
many of
this
them.
is the reason why most of us have moved up to this area. You've lived here. You've lived here all your life. People that I know who have moved up here have moved up for the conservative principles of what Vermont stands for.
Yeah. And it seems like they're being squeezed, and they aren't able to do some of the things they want to do. There's one study that said that Vermont is the most regulated state in the country.
Wow, that's
If
interesting.
if you go through the law and take out all the shalls and shall nots and all that wording, there's something like over 80,000 shalls and shall nots and laws and regulations and do's and don'ts in our code. And that's, I think really what's just stumped, our economy
Our
and our
growth.
businesses and our
Our-
growth
yeah.
and our even our hope, for better. And that's where we really need to start rolling some of those things back. And there's been some steps forward. They the whole Act 181, which had to do with land use, was a shot at adjusting Act 250, which was just been a noose around Vermonters' neck for a long time. And anybody that's had to deal with Act 250 or try to do anything,
So what
build
is
it,
Act 250?
it's just it's a land use regulation. And so if you want to build something, you have to go through this Act 250 process.
Is it like getting permits
It's
or
just
getting
it's a series of hoops you have to jump through.
Huh.
And every hoop costs money, and every hoop takes months.
Time.
And so if somebody comes with some money and wants to build a house or start a business or whatever, time they get through the Act 250 process, they either have been told they can't do it because it doesn't pass some regulation or some strict law, or it costs so much, or it takes so long they give up and don't do it any longer. So Act 181 came
So
to.
it kind of forces people, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
so it kind of forces people into not being able to build or build on their property, but to acquire already pre-existing houses.
Yeah, we have a housing shortage. There's a reason why. Act
Because they
250,
can't build.
Act 250 has stunted
Wow.
our growth for so many years. And now it's really caught up to us, in a critical way.
Huh.
But there was they passed Act 181, which was supposed to be a correction to Act 250, and they did make some corrections. They made it easier.
Kind of like an addendum.
Yeah, they made it easier to build in the kind of the economic zone, the opportunity zones around big cities, which is the easiest place to grow. But what they did in turn, they made it somewhat easier to build in and around towns, less hoops to jump through, I should say. But then they turned around and made it harder for the rural Vermonters to build and to do what they wanted to do with their land. So it was like a give and take. And
What a nightmare.
yeah, it was horrible because not everybody wants to live in the village. Not everybody wants to live in a city. We have Vermont's made up of rural Vermonters that have their land. Many have had it for generations.
And want their families,
want their
to,
families
build
to build
on
and-
it, or they want to add a building.
Exactly.
Wow.
And Act 181 originally, added regulations that made it almost impossible for them to build or to have that second generation family, home put on their land. Most of the Democrats, both people that I'm running against, voted for that regulation on rural Vermonters. Luckily, Vermonters rose up and
Good.
rebelled against that.
Good.
And they were able to get that changed this year and get those regulations off rural Vermonters. But
And when did that happen?
this past Senate
Good.
session.
So people are recognizing that if anything's going to happen, they're not going to have to, they can't depend on whoever it is that's running the government.
Right.
They have got to go firsthand and take a participatory active role in enforcing this stuff.
Yeah, they have to rise up and have their voice heard.
Right.
And
Well, good. Good on them.
yeah, so that was one good
And
thing.
where was that area that happened? Outside of Bennington, Manchester?
Well, it was for the whole state. It was
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Yay.
so
Good.
Yeah.
Now, so people are waking up.
yeah.
I think, I always say you want to wake somebody up, hit them in the wallet.
Yeah.
That's usually the first place when you realize you've got money coming out of your pocket, you can't afford this, you can't afford that, and the same thing I've been saying about the food and the gas prices.
Yeah.
I mean, that has, I think, woken up more people to what's really going on out there, to question it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the taxes have just gone up, and yet the tax base has gotten smaller and shrinking all the time. So it's an increased burden on every taxpayer. You know.
And they're driving them out, so
Yep.
it's increasing the tax bill because people are leaving the state.
Yep.
It's a no-brainer, I would think.
Increased spending, less people paying it is just a recipe for disaster, and Vermonters just can't afford it any longer. I was speaking just last night to someone up in Stratton, actually, and he said, we've been thinking about it for a while, but we got our tax bill, and he said our tax bill was over $1,000 a month. So obviously he had quite a bit of property, and he said when it broke that threshold, we said, you know what, we have to leave. We just got to go. We just can't
They're
continue to do this.
I mean, do you really want to leave? Where do you go to?
Well, homeowners, a lot of them, just have had enough, and that's why I'm saying, that's a real shame when Vermonters are leaving because they can't pay their taxes or don't, want to pay that anymore. I was talking
It's
to
not
someone.
worth it to pay it.
Yeah, that's
basically.
kind of what they thought. They can
Not
move
worth
to
it.
a different state. and-
$12,000.
Yeah.
And do they have a condo? They might not even have a house.
No, yeah, and they can move to a different state and pay $2,000
And be
in
within the
property
same,
taxes.
and be within the same driving distance of where they
Yeah.
need to go for the weekend.
Yeah, so something has to change, and we need to curb spending and roll back regulations that have just shrunk our tax base and eliminated so much economic opportunity for our businesses and our individuals who want to start a business. And I've been pushing a tax cap. A lot of states have a tax cap. In fact, over 30 states in the country have some form of a tax cap, which says the state cannot levy on the people any more than this amount. And so it brings a.
Is that per decade? Is that forever?
Every year.
Or every
and,
year?
Okay. And most of them, I think the best one is a tax cap that the current year's tax bill can't be more than the previous year plus the rate of inflation.
Wow.
And it just brings a limit to this uncontrolled spending that Vermonters have experienced and seen for the last 20 years. And unfortunately, politicians have been promising fiscal responsibility. They've been.
I'm sorry that I laugh, but
Yeah.
it is pretty funny.
And they just haven't done that. And I think the only way to force fiscal responsibility is to enact a tax cap that says,
I think that's
what?
a great idea. I think
know,
that's
You can't just spend what you want and send the bill to the people any longer. And it really brings the power back to the people. Because right now they're helpless. They get their
Is
tax
that
bill
part
and
of
they
your
have no control
campaign?
of it. Yeah, that's a big part of my campaign. I think it's the only way to stop the bleeding of
hemorrhaging.
yeah.
Forget the bleeding.
Yeah,
Hemorrhaging.
our young people don't want to hear another promise. Our seniors, our seniors can't stand another promise for another 2 years. The people that want to
Well, they're
retire
on
here,
fixed income.
right?
And they have a fixed amount of money even from their retirement that's
yeah.
coming out. So now I hear people that are having to dig deeper into their retirement.
Right, or the people that are 55 and starting to think about retirement. And I think the only way to, because they can't trust government any longer, and I think the only way to reassure them that they can afford to stay in Vermont is a tax cap that will say, okay, your taxes won't spiral out of control like they have been the last 10 years. And, Vermont doesn't have a revenue issue, because I talk to people and they say, oh, but we need this money, and, we need this money, and this has to be funded. Vermont, brings in enough money.
For tourism.
Tourism and taxes as we're at now. I mean, I think we're the second or third most taxed per individual in the country.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So, I mean, we don't have a tax problem. We have a spending problem. We don't have a revenue issue, I think, which most of my progressive Democrat, opponents think we need more revenue, we need more revenue, we need more revenue, which means more fees and more taxes and more all that kind of stuff. But we have a spending issue, a spending problem, and so we need
And
to.
that's at the top.
Yeah, we need a tax cap that limits the amount that government can spend, and going forward, it limits the amount of waste that's there, and it'll force fiscal responsibility. We're not asking, to cut things that are going to be needed in our state. I'm just saying that'll force them to do
Fiscal
the
responsibility.
fiscal responsibility.
I mean, I would think at any one point in time, usually people who have children start facing that when you have responsibilities, like
Vermonters-
running a state.
Yeah,
Right?
Vermonters have to balance their checkbook, and when there's no more money there, you stop spending, right?
Right.
And the state needs to do the same thing. But as of lately, the last 10, 15 years, the state just keeps spending and just sends the bill to the people. And so
I don't know how they can get away with that. I mean, I don't know how, this has been going on this long, that
Yeah.
something like this can escalate to the point where all of a sudden their spending has increased over $1 billion over the 8 or 9 that they're already spending.
yeah, it's just out of control. And we can break down if we have time. Education spending is
Yeah, well, that was
been a big
going to be
issue.
my next topic, is
Yeah.
the whole education thing. I mean, we've been watching what's been going on with the whole education thing. But to me, I homeschooled my kids precisely for the
Yeah.
reason with what's going on with the education in Vermont. I mean, it's just, I don't know what. And last night we were walking down Gannon Road, and we met this beautiful couple, and they had 2 kids. And I said, "Oh, what grade are they on?" And they kind of looked, and homeschooled,
Yeah.
because of the fact that they pay these kind of taxes and they don't feel like their kids are getting a proper education. I mean, that's why I took my kids out, and so then became, okay, so I'm not sending my kids to school. I'd like my taxes back.
Yeah.
I'd like the money.
Wish it worked that way. Yeah.
Didn't work out.
No.
So, so here are parents, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of homeschoolers in Vermont.
Yeah.
And they came up here for that particular reason. So,
Yeah.
because of the education system.
Right. I mean, there's 2 sides of this. I mean, to look at. I mean, it's one the education, and the other the cost of the education. And as we were just talking about the cost, education is skyrocketed.
Oh, it's
out of sight. It would have been up another 7% this year, except for the legislative. They paid it down 100. They basically robbed from Peter to pay Paul. Put $100 million into it to curb it so it didn't look so bad. But
Where
yeah.
did they steal it from? I mean, that's the
Who knows?
question.
I mean, I know they're only going to be paving 50-some miles of road this year.
Oh,
and
great.
we should be
There
paving
goes my shocks.
200 or 300 miles to keep up our roads. Our teachers' pension funds are vastly underfunded, and so I think they've been stealing money from those places. And it's all just starting to come to light, and you can only hide it for so long.
Right.
The state of
The
our
question is, where did it go?
Yeah.
Becomes the question.
Well,
right?
that's the thing. We Vermonters, I'm all for a good education, and I think Vermonters have the resolve to pay for a quality education. They don't want to go cheap on education.
They shouldn't. This
No.
is our future. These are our
And
kids, our future.
And the truth is per student, we're number 2 in the country of how much money we pay per student to educate our
And
children.
can I ask what that is?
It's just a few dollars less than $30,000 per student.
God.
New York is the second.
So when my kids were going to school 20 years ago, it was 21, and this is New York,
Yeah.
out in the Hamptons, 21,000 per child.
Yeah, and that was probably pretty high for back then.
It was exorbitant, and that was
Yeah.
my big beef. My big beef was I'm paying this kind of money and my kid's not getting educated.
Yeah,
So now here we are 20 years later,
yeah,
and we're up in little old Vermont,
yeah,
and it's costing the school system $30,000 to educate a
yeah,
child
right.
that our taxpayers are paying
And
for.
it goes up and up and
Oh
up
my
every
God.
year. And so, you know, like I said, I think Vermonters want to pay for a good
Second
education.
highest in the country.
Yeah, but we have to have some restraint there, you know, and I wouldn't propose taking any money from our teachers and students. I think our teachers deserve every penny they make.
And more.
I think they're overworked and underpaid, and I don't want to take it away from the teachers or students, but I do think that we have a lot of fluff in the administration and our supervisory unions.
Gee, can't imagine
Yeah,
that.
that
Wow.
you know, there's something like 51 or 52 supervisory unions in Vermont that
that are all
supervise
packing a nice amount of money into their
yeah,
retirement funds.
that supervise just slightly over 100 schools. You know,
That's
it's ridiculous
crazy.
to have that many.
That's crazy.
Right, and
The
so-
numbers don't add up.
No,
I'm sorry.
they overlap and underlap, and it's just it's a ridiculous system, and we need to get rid of. We should be able to do
9/10
that
of
with
them.
we should be able to do it and with 5 or 6 supervisory unions instead of 50, and I think that would save hundreds of millions of dollars. Get schools to cooperate and work with each other on things. You don't need a separate
Early
supervisor.
retirement, maybe.
Separate
We could
supervisor.
offer them a nice early retirement
Well-
just to get their hands out of the honey pot.
Yeah, but it's just, you know, it's just too much waste at the administrative
So
level.
is this part of your also a part of your campaign?
Well, that's the first place I would look to target to save money.
The education.
Yeah, at the administration level of our
Oh
schools,
boy.
because it's just such an obvious waste of money. Obviously, we need some, but we don't need 52 of them. And then you get situations where, there's so many supervisory unions that they're talking about consolidating schools. I definitely want to leave it up to the towns to consolidate if they so choose. I believe that our small towns have had schools forever. I don't see why, if done right, they can't continue to afford to have their schools if they want them. But in cases where in my district, Sunderland decided to close their school, and there's a school in Arlington, which is just a mile, maybe a mile and a half, that could absorb those students, those elementary kids. But because Arlington's in one supervisory union and Sunderland's in a different supervisory union, all the kids, when Sunderland closed, they had to bus all the kids all the way to Dorset. And so the kids have to
Doesn't
ride
make
on the bus all the
sense.
way to Dorset
Doesn't make sense.
because they're in a different
Gas,
supervisory
time.
union. Yeah, where they could have gone just a mile and a half to Arlington. And so it's just so much of that,
Politics.
dysfunction
Yeah.
that we need to get rid of. And when we get rid of some of that fluff, that I think then we can fund the teachers' pensions the way they should be funded. I mean, that's a commitment that we've made to our teachers. They've worked their whole life, and they're looking at their pension 60% funded. I mean, it's just not right. And so I propose getting rid of a lot of the administrative bloat. I think no more than really 8% or to 10% of our tax, education money should be going to administration. The rest
So you're
should be in the
thinking of
schools.
cutting it 40%.
What's that?
So you're thinking of cutting the administration down to cutting it by 40% so that you're running on a 10% level?
Yeah, I say less than 10% of our education money should go to administrations.
Oh, yeah.
And the rest, the money that's saved, we can put right back into our teachers and students, fund their pension funds.
Or the school,
Yeah.
or their their books. Or,
And by doing that, being more fiscally responsible, then we can, when we enact a cap to our tax cap, we can have the same quality, level of education
with school taxes.
with the same amount of money.
Okay, so after education, what would you say would become the next big gaping money hole in the whole state of not the state, but the
Well-
county of Bennington. So the education, that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
So what's the next big?
Well, there's
money hole.
Well, there's a housing crisis.
Mm-hmm.
It's very serious. We have, people can't afford to buy a house anymore.
Right.
A big number of people can't afford
understand
to
that.
buy a house. And a big reason for that is the taxes are stuck on the end of their mortgage bill. And as taxes go up, their mortgage gets bigger, and when their mortgage gets bigger, they qualify for less, right? When the bank calculates how much money you can borrow,
And you don't have the credit for it because it's too
all of a sudden your ability, the amount you can borrow goes down, but yet the price of houses are going up, and so they get left right behind.
And then
so
there's no places to rent
and then
because
there's-
everybody's scrambling for a place. I mean,
it's forcing more people in the rental market, and so that means there's not enough places to rent, so that drives renting prices up. So it's just a cycle that just affects everyone.
it seemed like really blatant to me. I guess it was right around COVID when the whole COVID thing happened, and there was I don't know if there was more regulatory that happened, but to me, for myself, that's when I started to really notice that we were in a very serious housing crisis.
Yeah. Speaking of rents, there's a lot of renters that kind of stayed on the sidelines of politics. They didn't directly get a tax bill because they rent. The landlord gets a tax bill, but I think renters are starting to realize their rents have gone up, and up so much.
Oh yeah,
And
well,
they're realizing it's because
the landlords have to raise the rent,
Yeah.
right? And then there's always the utilities. I know that that's the next situation that's starting to happen, which is our energy bills.
yeah.
I've been waiting. I've been hearing it. It was part of the campaign promise that we could become so energy efficient
Yeah.
with what we do with Starlink and all of the other things that are going on out there, that we shouldn't be paying for utilities, but yet our utility bills still keep going up.
Yep, fees and regulations. We have to be willing to look at other options,
Right.
And technology's changed. People were afraid of nuclear before. People were afraid of, some of the other options out there. But things technology is ever increasing and changing and becoming safer. And we need to really look at some of those other options for sure. But again, the progressive Democratic agenda, has added fees and regulations to the power companies that they just pass on to the people. There's a reason
they
why
don't
your
have any
electric bills
choice.
come out.
They don't have any choice, really.
Yeah, and it's just spread through our whole society. I mean, you go to the DMV now, and to register your car my truck was like $200 to register my truck for the year. And it's just, the party that's been in control in Montpelier is again looking for revenue in various different places.
So they can spend more.
So they can spend more, and I would contend that it's not a revenue issue, it's a spending issue. And so we need to grow our tax base so we have more people paying taxes. How do we do that? Well, we keep our young people here.
Right.
We create an
Get them
environment.
jobs.
Yeah, we guarantee them a healthy future with tax caps, so they'll know that their taxes aren't going to spiral out of control. We cut the regulation that just kind of stunts their ability to start businesses and do the things that they're fulfill the dreams and economic abilities, and give them create an environment they want to stay in and they think they can succeed in. But right now our young people don't think they can succeed in Vermont, and so that's got to change. And again, we do that by, I think a big part of it, we can restore their hope with a tax cap, so they know that taxes aren't going to just keep skyrocketing. And with that, they'll start to create businesses, which will grow our tax base, and they'll keep our young people here. And again, our upper age limit people are people 55 and over that are either thinking about retirement or retiring. We have to keep them in Vermont. They've lived here their whole life, and so
Right.
again, the tax cap will reassure them that I'm going to be able to afford to live here because my taxes aren't going to skyrocket, and again, it'll just bring fiscal responsibility to our state. And as the tax base grows, if people stay here, businesses grow. when we get rid of the regulations that have so stunted, the economy. I was talking to someone about a month ago, and this gentleman is wants to build a business. He has one business in Bennington. He wants to build another business in Rutland, and he said he's been trying for almost 2 years now. He's put over $1 million into the process of the Act 250 process, because it's a fairly large business. He's almost 2 years into it, over $1 million into it, and he still doesn't have a permit. He still doesn't know for sure if he's going to be able to do what he wants to do or build what he wants to do. But you have to go through surveyors and perk tests and all these hoops you got to jump through before you even know if you're going to be able to do what you want to do.
And all that money he's putting into it is probably draining the other business that he's running.
And years go by, and there's no wonder that businesses say, oh, you know what, I'm just not even going to try. I'll go build somewhere else. It's easier.
Okay, so we've touched on education. We've touched on what was the first topic?
Housing, taxes.
Houses, taxes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the environment.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's going? I mean, to me, I'm seeing, farms becoming obsolete. I'm seeing the farms selling out. I'm seeing farms that are no longer in existence. I'm seeing farmhouses that are getting sold. I don't know who's moving in. But so what's going on environmentally in Vermont? I mean, we watch it, we see it. I always question it because I'm outside. I'm a landscaper. I'm a gardener. And, and I think that there's a lot of regulatory stuff that's going on that is not healthy for the environment.
Yeah. Or the farms trying to succeed.
Or all of the things.
Yeah. I mean, it's a nationwide thing. I mean, it seems like the small farms have been harder and harder and harder to survive. Again, if you got a farm with, when I was a kid, on our road we had 2 or 3 small farms, 30, 40, 50 head of cattle that they milked, and they'd been there for hundreds of years,
Decades.
But now, again, with everything costing so much, with taxes costing so much, their seed costing so much, labor costing so much, just to buy a tractor nowadays, is $200,000-$300,000 for a tractor. It gets to the point these small farms unfortunately can't survive, and the only farms it seems like that are surviving are the really super large ones.
Yeah, the really big ones.
And it's not Vermont, I love to drive down the road and see a small farm with 10, 20 head of cattle, and so we have to support the farmers everywhere we can. But it's a tough one. It's hard,
So how do you feel environmentally, what's going on, besides the taxation and besides everything being so? Do you see that there's more stuff going on? Okay, so polluting. I mean, I just feel like between the rise in the chemtrails and this crazy weather that we've been having, that there's nobody out there really. I mean, there's a group of us that are always talking about what's going on environmentally. And, write a letter to Congress, do this, do that, because it's pretty apparent that there's, and this is, I don't want to run too far with this, but I've seen the change in the weather. I know it's not natural. I know that there's something going on, and I jokingly, but not really, call it weather warfare, because a lot of this stuff is controlling if the farmers are going to have a good year, if the different crops are going to have a good year, if they get too much rain, if they don't get enough rain, if there's a drought, if there's not a drought, and I just see, is there what you would consider a step that we're moving in a direction to possibly take out all the small farmers so that we can put in the big corporations like you talked about?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's a direct bombardment. I don't know.
I don't think I'd go so far to think there's some. I just don't know that there's theories and conspiracy theories, and maybe they're right, maybe they're not. I just don't know. But I do know that some days you go outside and and it's hot, and some days it's cold. It used to be the weather's
Normal.
fairly
There's no normal
average,
anymore.
and now it's these extremes.
Yeah, there's no normal anymore.
I don't know if it's just the natural cycle of the planet or
I
what.
don't think it
I
is.
don't know.
Yeah.
But our environment's important to Vermonters. Everybody knows it.
I would
It doesn't
think
matter
so.
what party you're involved with. Vermonters care about Vermont. We want to keep Vermont beautiful. We want to keep Vermont clean. We want to, we don't want to contaminate it, and we want our animals to thrive, and hunters to be able to hunt, and
Right.
and our loggers to be able to log, and we don't want to ruin any of that. Vermont's beautiful.
So
and
this is
let's keep
kind of
it that
off the
way.
cuff, but it is something really big to me because I have been doing a lot, is the PFOA
Yeah.
situation, not only around Bennington, but around North Bennington. Also now I'm hearing Shaftesbury, and I've also heard that it's infiltrated because of these plastic factories.
Yeah.
So now I'm hearing about it's in Arlington. So, and this is heavy duty contamination. And everybody that lives in that area, they're either sick, they've got cancer. I mean, is there any way that there's, and this is where you can sign me up, any kind of research that you want done, coming into contact with, is this what is causing these little pockets of sick people?
Yeah. Well,
It's big.
Yeah,
I mean, it's everybody I talk to.
I mean, as everybody knows, the PFOA, that was something we didn't even test for until
It wasn't even on the
lately.
radar.
Right. These forever
About 10
chemicals.
years ago.
Then they just, if they're in the ground, they stay in the ground.
too late.
They don't go away. And so now it's just starting to. Hoosick Falls, really blew the cover off the
Thank
PFOA issue. I mean, people had no clue that it was as contaminated as it was over there. That's on the New York side. And now we're starting to, as we start to test now,
North
we find them in
Bennington.
North Bennington and West
Parts of
Bennington and
Shaftesbury.
and it's
Arlington.
through the air, in the ground, however it was contaminated, and they're there. There's you can't really get rid of them. I think that's why they call them forever chemicals. So, I guess with that, I mean, I would certainly want to make sure that every well gets tested, regardless of where you live,
And the
because
soil.
and the soil, and I think that would be something that we should look, a goal, just because
There are,
we just
there
don't
are,
know.
the only reason why I bring this up is because, I'm very much into the curable. And PFOAs can be filtered out
Yeah.
with the proper filter
Yeah,
system.
right.
I mean, it's a no-brainer. Wouldn't you want a filter on your, if you know you have water in your, that is contaminated, wouldn't you think, I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
So let's get, let's maybe work towards getting every well tested,
right.
just to make sure, because like you say, it's popping up all over. And,
People are
and-
taking showers, it's getting into their skin.
Right, but I mean the contamination is popping up all over the state.
yeah. Oh, it's
and,
really-
as we test it, and so, if something could have happened 200 years ago, and that factory was or not 200 years ago, but 100
Sure,
years
I
ago,
get
and the factory's gone now, so you don't even think there would be a place that would be contaminated, but it is.
That's really the problem with what's going on in North Adams.
Yeah.
A lot of these factories are done and gone. They've, but yet you still have those hot spots
Yeah.
of when they would dump their stuff. So anyway, it's just something that's been really new. So,
Yeah.
so that would be a great campaign promise with the amount of PFOAs that we could have every well tested. It's not an expensive test.
No.
And I've looked into what the actual filters cost. They're not that expensive for
Yeah.
health. For
Right.
health.
No, it's fine. It's so important.
Right. So.
And again, it's because we just don't know where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
We can't assume that our area is clean. We need to.
Okay, so
find
so
out.
you're talking about putting a cap on different regulations for businesses so
Yeah.
that they are able to offer better jobs, sustain them in a better paying job so that people, younger generation, or even the people that are here, can have jobs to be able to
Yeah.
pay their exorbitant taxes.
Right. And get back to.
Such a
It's really, it's a mess. But getting back to the housing, because I feel like we didn't quite go into that a lot.
okay. I'm sorry.
No, it's we need more rental units. We need more first home units for people to buy, and they need to be affordable. So how do we do all that?
Cut the
There's
taxes.
cut taxes, cut the regulations, so it's easier to build a home. I propose, we need there's a ton of big houses in Vermont that families have grown, the families have grown up, and then the father and mother are left there, and they have this huge house, and I would promote converting houses from one families to two families. And, if when governments took a shot at building houses, and they fund these housing agencies, and these housing agencies, like most things in government, end up spending $7, $8, $9 million a unit to get a house. Look at the Ben El project down there on Bennington, and it's just a ridiculous amount of money just to get a housing unit. And so why not let's see what we can do to get some of these big houses converted into two families. We're sitting right here in North Adams. There's a lot of 2 and 3 family homes in North Adams, and Bennington could do the same thing. And
With some of the bigger houses.
We need to first of all make it easy for them to do it. If they want to do it, you can do it. No regulations. And then maybe do some tax incentives or tax breaks or something so they would be encouraged to do it. I mean, if the government gave a homeowner a $50,000 tax break, that's still the cheapest possible unit they could build. That's way cheaper than anything they could build. And have it with no hoops, no strings attached. If you want to convert your house, do it, and we'll help you do it. But that's way cheaper than anything else the government could build. And
you'd be utilizing these houses. The people who either own it could make extra income or sell the whole. And I don't know if there's.
It helps gives them extra income so they can pay their taxes, but it also creates a unit for someone to live in.
And I just want to give a plug for Lily West, who's been. She's had a great vision about the housing issue, and she has been really working very hard to get not only families in affordable living, but also to start working towards these kind of concepts. And I think she would be a great one to hook up with.
Yeah, no, I have. I've talked to her a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good realtors in Bennington that are not just talking it, but really out there trying to solve this problem.
Make it happen.
And frankly, that's, the private sector is the sector to target. They're the ones that can solve this problem for us. I don't think the government spending more money and funding housing agencies to try to go do it is the answer. If we create an environment where the private sector can invest and build, they can do it so much cheaper and so much more efficient than the government can. And so we need to quit looking at these housing agencies that think that they can do it, because they can't.
They can't.
They can, but it just costs 10 times as much as it should. But the private sector, if we can incentivize and do everything that they to really help them lift the regulations and lift the noose that's around their necks. It's restricting their ability to build. They're the ones that can make this change.
Okay, so say you win. You win, which I hope you do. We're behind it 100%. What's the first thing you're going to go after? And what do you think is the first thing that can show results?
Tax cap.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think Vermonters deserve a tax cap. I think, again, it's the only way of restoring hope in our government. Like I said, people are fleeing here, and they don't want another promise that it's going to change. They don't want, they've heard
through another 2 years,
every 2 years
another unaffordable tax.
Exactly. And a tax cap settles it. Okay, their taxes are not going to grow any more than the rate of inflation.
And what kind of a tax cap would you propose? Just add a general.
In the general terms, because obviously there's a lot.
10%, 20%, 30%.
No, my tax cap would be
no increase.
This year's, when you're making this year's budget, it's based on last year's budget plus the rate of inflation. No increase there. Inflation is something that's out of our control in a lot of ways. It's in the.
But it makes sense. I mean, inflation's going to happen no matter where we live in any part of the country. Right.
And so, no more 7. Last year, I think it was almost 11% increase in taxes. This year was really 7%, but they cut it down to 3.5% because they stole some money from other places.
I can't wait to see that bill.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it'll catch up next year.
Right.
You're either going to have to fund it again somewhere, steal from something else, or
rob Peter to pay Paul.
Make the taxpayers eat it. And so a tax cap is solid, and it's going to force fiscal restraint. It's going to, I think, restore hope to our young people and to our seniors who are afraid to stay here any longer. And by doing that, it'll increase our tax base, and I think that's really where we need to be. And I can't understate this, but it'll force fiscal restraint.
I'm hearing
it's
it
so
loud and
needed.
clear. Yeah.
Regardless of what party's in power, we need fiscal restraint. We just can't spend money on any agenda that any legislator has and wants
That
to
sounds
pass.
good.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And just by watching, for me, it's been just watching what's been happening to Vermont and wondering, like, what is going on? What is going on here? And there's
Yeah.
been little rumblings here and there, little court cases and town hearings. And our good friend Billy Clark, he's been able to tell me a lot of stuff that's been going on behind the sidelines of what's going on with the political situation that's been going. I mean, he's now
Yeah.
retired. He stepped out of it. Not that because, I don't know. I've never asked him that, if that one of the reasons him stepping out of it was because of the politics that were going on. But
Yeah.
he said it was really getting bad.
Yeah.
And when you think to yourself, little old town of Bennington, how bad can it really be?
Well, that's a good point, because there's been so much political infighting for so long. I grew up in a family where my father was a Democrat, my mother's a Republican. They basically X'd each other out every time they went to the polls. But if there's one thing I did learn, is that the right's not always wrong and the left's not always right. And we do have to work with people. That people have different opinion, different philosophies,
okay.
different ways of seeing things, and sometimes you got to set aside our frustrations, and try to get something
aggravations.
aggravations, and try to get something done for the good of the people.
Yeah.
And Montpelier hasn't been doing that. It's been under one party control, and so they've just forced their will on the people and on the other side, and Montpelier desperately needs a balance of power.
So do you go into Montpelier to change that, or do you go to Washington to change that?
Well, I'm running to go to Montpelier. That's where state senate works.
Okay.
There's some candidates that are running for the House seat and for the Senate seat that would go to Montpelier. But for me, it's all about the state issues,
Right.
and what's affecting Bennington and southern Vermont. And so that's where.
But could we
we're
get
at.
any support from Washington, I guess is the question that I'm looking for. With all of this, to me, this is pretty good. Numbers don't lie, and that's why I love numbers. Because, the numbers, you can add that all up. You can show who, rob from Peter to pay Paul. You can see how the expenditures are, the cost, the increase, all of this stuff. I mean, to me, that's just pure evidence,
Yeah.
right?
It was a small snowball at first, and it's just becoming bigger
I
and
would
bigger and
think it-
bigger.
yeah.
To the point where if something doesn't happen, if some fiscal restraint doesn't happen, our state's in big trouble. And we're
You
already
don't think
seeing
it
some
is
signs.
already?
Well, yeah, it is, but it's going to be in bigger trouble.
Oh, bigger trouble. Wow, I can't imagine.
We desperately need change. We need to bring fiscal responsibility to our state. We need a tax cap so it ensure people they're not going to be priced out of their homes, taxed out of their homes,
Or their jobs,
regulated.
or anything.
Yeah.
It's completely keeping people from being able to dream the dream that they've always wanted to
Right.
dream.
I love Vermont.
Right.
It's,
How can
and,
you
and
not
so many
love
people
Vermont?
love Vermont.
Right.
And it's just a real shame when I hear people saying they have to leave. It's
Being
just
forced to leave.
forced
It's not
to
a
leave.
choice.
No,
It's not
no.
a choice anymore. You're
No.
being forced. So is there anything, very quick little whatever, that you want to add and give our viewers that, what are you willing to do? It sounds like you need about 4 secretaries if this is what you're going to be doing.
Well, the good thing is the hope is, like I said early in the show, that if we can flip 2 seats and John Rogers stays as our lieutenant governor, the balance of power in the Senate goes to the Republicans, and there is where our hope is, and there is where our chance to bring change is. I personally can't do it, but if I'm elected and one other person is elected, then we can really. There's a real opportunity there to bring change.
Wow.
The last election cycle, Republicans won a lot of seats, and a lot of seats in the Senate and the House, and it brought us to this really close part where the last time we we were able to get enough Senate seats that Governor Scott had could no longer be override his veto
Good.
with a supermajority. And now if we can win 2 more seats and John Rogers is elected, who's a great guy, by the way, and he's a real voice for everyday people in the working class. If we can get to that point where we get 2 more seats, then we can bring about some change and some legislation, and we desperately need a balance of power.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds hopeful, and I just hope that now that this time you started earlier, I'm hoping you're really campaigning hard.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that people are going to hear cap on your taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, these are things that are going to solidify the win from what I can see.
Yeah.
You know, because people have already been pretty beat up financially, or they've had to leave, or
they're just tired of the lies and the promises.
well, we all are that, but I want to see results. I want
Right.
to see that tax break.
Right.
I want, as long as there's political power, you'll always hear the BS,
Yeah.
right? But I'm all about action.
Right. And the education, they put forth a bill that was supposed to bring education reform, and really, if you dig into it, it's just a whole lot of nothing. Very little
Expensive, whole lot of nothing.
Very little immediate change, almost no immediate change, frankly. And they're talking about something maybe 3-4 years down the line might save some people money. Well, people can't wait for 3 or 4 years.
We don't have 3 or 4
Yeah.
years to save a little bit of money.
They need
I'm sorry.
fiscal responsibility now,
So.
and they deserve it.
Well, we have been talking with Spike Whitmire, who is running for the Senate Republican seat, and
Bennington District.
Bennington District, which needs it desperately, and his campaign quote is, "It's time for a change."
Yeah.
And I would have said that 10 years ago, but I think at this point people have to get beat up enough to really realize that it's really time for a change.
And just add one thing. If there's a website called VermontPromise.com,
Yeah,
and that's
seen
what the Republican leadership in the Senate
Is that VT Promise or Full
the
Vermont?
Full Vermont Promise.
FullVermontWordPromise.com.
And on there you'll see what the Republicans, if given the control of the Senate, will promise. But that's the legislation we'll push.
Wow.
If you're wondering how we'll do it, go on there. It'll tell you exactly
Well,
what we're going to do.
That's really
and what
great.
we promise to do.
That is something really important, and I
Yeah.
think we should add that at the end of the show, along with all your contact information. So, thank you for joining us. I am Krista Jan Ryan, and I am your host. And you have been watching Recovery from Religion. And today's show is "It's Time for a Change" with Spike Whitmire. Thank you for coming. And I always so appreciate, and I learned so much as to what's really going on out there, and I hope you have too. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
We are all wounded children, needing arms of grace to hold us through the darkest hours and lead us to